Okay, so it's Monday. The college football playoff has been set. That came out yesterday. I've been able to sit on it and think about it for a day. The For the most part, I think the committee got it right. Um, Alabama clear cut number one. Um, Clemson number two with what they did to Notre Dame. Ohio State, even though they didn't look good. And at number three, I think everybody expected that. The one spot that seemed like it was up for grabs was going to be the number four spot, and Notre Dame gets that over Texas A&M. And I know a lot of A&M fans are going to be upset about that. I don't have a huge problem with it. They both have one loss. They're both blowout losses. Notre Dame's came to number two Clemson by 24 points, and A&M's came to number one Alabama by 28 points. They were both non-competitive games, and if you start breaking that down, Notre Dame does have a win over Clemson, even though it was without Trevor Lawrence. And I think we noticed what a difference that makes when Trevor Lawrence in the game as far as offensive goes. They seem different, especially with his running ability. And the threat of it, I think that really helped ETN out. And plus, they got a little healthier on defense this time around. A&M, they were close. I just don't think they had a little bit of an argument, but I don't think it was a big one. The one thing that was disappointing is seeing Cincinnati come in at number 8. And I didn't expect them to get in. I don't think anybody expected them to get in. And what Fickle had been saying is, we just want to be part of the conversation. That was his hopes, is can we just be part of the conversation and see if we, to get that spot. And I think by putting them 8th, that was a pretty glaring spot to say we didn't even consider you. That 8-0, if you're not in Power 5, it doesn't matter. And just it's not a disrespect. Well, it is a disrespect. But it just went to show you that if you're not a Power 5 school, you're not getting in. That's just the way it is. Maybe if it was a regular year and say Cincinnati played 3 high-level Power 5 teams and beat them, okay, maybe. And I know people just say, well, go ahead and schedule that. Well, sometimes they schedule games 10 years in advance, and you don't know who's going to be good. I mean, obviously in Alabama and somebody's going to be good, but that's a tough game for a Cincinnati to schedule. You're not going to get probably an Alabama game. They get the Ohio State game once in a while because it's in state. It's, Ohio State does that by playing Cincinnati or Bowling Green or Toledo once in a while, so they can get that game. But getting any other games is pretty tough. So basically, I guess my discussion would be, I think it's time for the playoff to expand. I think a lot of people are saying 8. I was never a proponent of 16, but I think I'm getting there because it's getting so top heavy now in the college football playoff of, Alabama's always going to be in, Clemson's always going to be in, and chances are Ohio State's always going to be in. Those 3 schools dominate recruiting, and that's just kind of where we're at. So all the top players go to those schools. In the bowl games, I know a lot of old whites and old guys, think about that with bowl games. Oh, well, you're going to take away from bowl games. Well, bowl games don't matter. And I think the kids are starting to tell you that they don't matter. Once the playoff was put into place, those higher teams, the higher prospects always recruiting-wise end up at the schools that have a chance to play for a national championship. And that's the way it is moving. And, like people want parity, kind of like the NFL has, where, you have different teams that can win it every year. And that's just not possible in college football just because it's recruiting. The kids get to pick where they get to go. You don't get to draft them. And I think the only way to try to spread that talent pool out a little bit is to give more schools a shot. And if it's just going to be 4, it's basically, for the most part, every year, everybody's playing for one spot because 3 of them are almost locked up already. The Pac-12, the playoff committee just has no respect for them, and they don't pay attention. Now, the Pac-12 shot themselves in the foot. The way they kind of, the way they had it set, and Oregon kind of backdoored into their championship game and then ends up beating USC, because then they could have had it, because USC could have been 6-0 if they win that game with a conference championship. You got to talk there. I mean, there's something there that they could have had an argument, even though they were only ranked like 15th, I think, before that. So they were already telling you that the Pac-12 doesn't matter. But I think moving forward, a 16 team makes sense. That would give your Cincinnati's, your Coastal Carolinas would get a shot to play. They can get into that game, and that can help their recruiting. And it helps the A&Ms. They would have got in. Florida probably would have got in. Indiana somehow is ranked, I think, would they come out 10th? They're a 1-loss team, and their only loss was by 7 points in Columbus to a team that they say is the number 3 team in the country. So you have multi-loss teams in front of them. So I don't understand the disrespect to Indiana. They had a hell of a season. So I think if you want schools to have better chances, you got to give them the opportunity to sell recruits to come to their school. And it's not saying they're going to win a national championship, but I think you have to give them a chance to play for one. Whether they be the 15th team or the 16th team going up against an Alabama, they got in the dance. And I think they know that there's a chance that, hey, on any given Saturday, something can happen. I mean, it's against, 16 against Alabama, probably not going to happen. But you never know what happens once you get on the field. But it would add to, kind of that selection Sunday, how they do for basketball. And teams just want a shot to get in. Hey, we get a play in the tournament. And the NCAA and them are, they've hemorrhaged so much money this year without fan experience. I know there's big TV contracts, but a bunch of money for those athletic programs come into ticket sales when you're playing in front of 100,000 people. And I've seen reports where some athletic departments said they were going to have a revenue shortfall of $65 million from their football season this year. And they're going to have to make that up somewhere, because I know a lot of people point to, well, the coaches don't need paid that much. And, that's an argument for a different day. But that money supports other programs. There's only a handful of college basketball programs that can sustain themselves, and not to mention women's basketball and swimming and gymnastics, volleyball, baseball, softball. All those teams need football revenue to stay alive. And I think what you're going to have to do is just like the NFL. You add more games in that are meaningful. They're playoff games. You split that out to where they're not all on ESPN. You get rid of these bowls because nobody gives a shit about those anymore anyways. You see that by how many kids, if they're not playing in the playoff, they mostly all opt out of the bowl game because they're going to the NFL, but they stay in if they have a chance to play, for a championship. So if you start spreading the love out of NBC gets in for bidding, ABC and ESPN, Fox, and just like the NFL, you start getting that money in there, and then that will recoup some of what they lost, and then just more revenue, because that's, at the end of the day, it's about revenue. And at some point in time, they're going to, piss and moan about we don't want to expand it because of the regular season. We don't want to make that, we want to keep that meaning everything, which they've already pointed out. I mean, Cincinnati won all their games. That doesn't matter. You have 3 lost teams in the top 10. You have 2 lost teams in the top 10 ahead of 1 lost, Power 5 schools and undefeated, non-Power 5. So the wins loss doesn't matter. I mean, they've already pointed that out, that it just doesn't matter to them. It's more of a 4-team Power 5 invitational, and that's what it is. Let's get it to 16. Let's let these other schools get in there, get a shot to play, help their recruiting, because we got a chance to win championships. That's a hell of a recruiting tool. And you can get, you can still have the conference championship game. If you want to do the 5 Power 5s, get an automatic bid, and then the rest of them get what they get. That works. And I think that's just the way it's got to go. They can play their conference games. Usually they have a in their non-conference schedule. They're playing somebody that never matters. It's just a tune-up game or whatever. And if you're talking about playing too much, just get rid of that game because it's unnecessary anyways. You just go back to, what's that, make it back to 12 or 11, whatever it needs be. And then you add those spots in the playoffs. They can't really say anything about playing football in December because of finals, because looks like everybody in the football world was playing in December during finals week, and you never heard a word about it. Nobody ever questioned, like, hey, these kids got finals. We can't play December 19th because these kids got to take their finals. It's funny how that went by the wayside. As soon as they needed that TV revenue, they found a way to get that done. So I think that's the way it's got to go. Give everybody a chance. Give somebody a chance to recruit guys of, hey, we can make it to the playoff. Maybe some teams can get some better recruiting going, and we can get a little more even spaced as opposed to, 5 or 6 teams just pulling away from the rest of college football. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it needs to happen.
Whiteside?